In the past 2 years, Chinese Android smartphones have been getting progressively better, with a wealth of manufacturers to choose from, ranging from Meizu to Oppo as well as Ficom. It's also an increasingly competitive category, and so today we're taking a look at the Elephone P8000, which is a flagship smartphone of Elephone, a company that we haven't heard a lot of here in the States until quite recently. The P8000 offers great specs at a reasonable price that's under $200 unlocked, so it's ultra affordable and also offers a very good build quality. In terms of dimensions, it's very similar to the Oppo Find 7, a phone that offers a pretty sturdy build as well, inclusive of a metal frame as well as some concurved edges along the sides. However, whereas the Oppo Find 7 is a phone that ranges for around $450, the P8000 can be picked up for as low as $160 online right now. So while the P8000 specs aren't as high-end as the Oppo Find 7, it remains ultra competitive with other Android smartphones in the $200 price category. And these specs include a 5.5-inch IPS 1080p HD resolution display, a MTK6753 64-bit octa-core processor clocked at 1.5 GHz, Android 5.1 with a very light skin on top, we'll discuss that later on, 3 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of ROM, and a 5-megapixel front-facing camera, and a 13-megapixel rear camera produced by Samsung. And the usuals we've come to expect, inclusive of Bluetooth 4.0, Wi-Fi, and GPS. There's even some extras on board the Elephone P8000, and that includes the fingerprint ID reader on the very back. Although the position isn't as optimal as something that would be front-facing, it's still a nice touch, and you can use the phone to scan your fingerprint to unlock it for enhanced security, and it works in virtually any direction. It's pretty sensitive and offers a rather accurate reader as well. Otherwise, there's also the addition of a 4,165 mAh battery, which is incredibly massive and allows the P8000 to last for 2 to 3 days without having to recharge it. And charging the phone up is also ultra fast thanks to the use of Qualcomm's quick charge technology. So as long as you have a charger that supports quick charging, you can get this thing powered up in under 2 hours, which is quite impressive. Otherwise, underneath the back cover, you also have access to 2 micro SIM cards. However, one limitation is this phone is a tri-band phone as opposed to a quad band, and that's a little disappointing. That's because unless you are in Europe or in Asia, you can't actually use 4G LTE services, and also T-Mobile service will be extremely spotty, although you can still use Leica Mobile. On the bottom of the phone, you have access to the micro USB port for charging as well as syncing, and on the sides, you have access to a volume rocker as well as a power on-off switch. The buttons are also positioned correctly without any movement to them, so they feel quite tactile and responsive. The band here again is crafted completely out of aluminum, so it gives a very reassuring feel to the phone in general. The back cover can be a bit of a challenge to remove, and the actual battery is non-user replaceable, which is a bit of a shame. However, we would take the larger capacity over a removable battery any day. On the top, there's also a 3.5mm headphone jack, and overall, sleek and classy, which juxtaposes the sub-$200 price tag. Below the 5.5-inch display, users will find 3 capacitive controls, which correspond to the back, the menu, as well as the home key. The home key here is backlit and also corresponds to the notification LED, but there's only one color, which is blue, as opposed to number that you can customize for different applications. And also, if you purchase this phone in the first 5,000 that was released, the actual notification light was missing, so that's something to know as well. On the front, there's access to a 5-megapixel selfie cam, as well as an ambient light sensor and a proximity sensor along with the earpiece, and a screen protector has been pre-applied by the manufacturer. Something I will add, though, is for this particular phone, there isn't Gorilla Glass 3, which is kind of an interesting omission considering that the P7000 actually did have Gorilla Glass installed, which is a little disappointing considering the P7000 is the successor to the P8000 series. The UI here is pretty clean and elegant, and it's a pretty vanilla build of Android 5.1 Lollipop with a few changes here and there, and that mainly is the omission of a universal app drawer. So instead of tapping down below here to get a list of all your applications, they are sorted through different tabs that you can go through left and right, through management, social, entertainment, media, as well as more applications. So this is a little bit similar to Xiaomi's MIUI as well as the Apple iOS interface in the sense that whenever you download a new application from the Android Play Store, it simply creates a desktop shortcut along one of the home screens. And so essentially you have unlimited home screens to customize with your favorite programs and widgets. In terms of performance, we were definitely pleased with what we saw here. With octa-core performance clocked at 1.5 GHz, I don't think users will have many issues when it comes to web browsing, performing general tasks, as well as multitasking. For graphic when pitted against more powerful Snapdragon-powered devices. However, in general, it more than does the trick for casual users. And again, at this price point, it delivers a pretty speedy performance overall. We have access to the standard drag-down notification drawer that I can tap on again to have access to turning Wi-Fi on and off, Bluetooth, auto-rotation, as well as Miracast for sending my device's screen onto a television set or onto a projector screen. And of course, you also have the ability to change up more settings through the direct settings drawer. However, something that is omitted on the P8000, we change the lock screen wallpaper, which I find to be kind of an interesting omission. But basically, if I turn the phone off and turn it back on again, the screen that you see here is actually locked. And for some reason, no one has been able to figure out how to change this yet. And hopefully that's something that Elephone will change in the coming weeks with the software update. But other than that, things are pretty speedy and responsive. Taking a look at some other aspects on this particular phone in terms of preloaded apps, it's very clean. There's very little bloatware installed. You have access to a standard YouTube application. There's music. There is also a download manager. You can personalize different themes, even though it really just changes the wallpaper, so it doesn't do too much as opposed to MIUI. There's a calculator that's been customized slightly by the manufacturer, a clock. There's a sound recorder. You can go through settings, Google search, voice search, Gmail, Hangouts, as well as your email application. In terms of call quality, we were impressed with the P8000. The actual microphone here does a surprisingly good job of canceling any background sounds. So if you're talking in a louder environment, such as outdoors, users will still be able to hear what you're saying with relative clarity. With that being said, this phone did not work exceedingly well on T-Mobile's networks here in the States just because of the lack of that fourth band. However, on AT&T, it remained a pretty good device. Reception will vary by region. At least here in Seattle, we didn't have too many issues. We could consistently receive roughly 2 to 3 bars of reception. When it comes to the actual speaker on the very back, it actually produces a pretty loud amount of volume. Playing back songs was generally impressive, even though it was a little bit on the tinier side of the spectrum. You can go through settings and turn on a boost mode for the speaker to make things sound even louder, but again, that does make the phone get a little bit hotter than usual in terms of the temperature. But in general, overall, the phone feels quite comfortable and easy to use. When it comes to the fingerprint scanner on the very back, it's a little bit finicky. However, it did work roughly 80% of the time that we tried it. In terms of changing the direction, it also worked nicely. However, I would have preferred in a matter of 2 to 3 seconds. It's extremely snappy and responsive, and you won't see any checkerboard patterns once the page has been fully loaded. And you have access to all the elements on the page, from the graphics to the interactive flash elements, in addition to videos and text. Everything is very sharp and crisp thanks to the use of the IPS display with very good viewing angles. I can easily pinch in and out, as well as use the accelerometer to change the screen orientation. So for example, here you can see that I can easily interact with the elements on the page here to read any news articles that I'm interested in. And you can see that colors are quite vibrant and popping, which is something that is an improvement over the P7000 series that had more washed out colors on the display. I can even change and customize the display even more to my liking, changing things like saturation, color tone, by going through settings again. So taking a look at that, I'm going to go through to the settings, go down to the display, and check on the mirror vision. That allows me to change things such as the vivid mode. I can also customize the mode, and you can see that some slight differences can be noted in the overall color reproduction and accuracy of the panel. I can also go through advanced tuning, change things, turn on dynamic contrast, and that creates a notable difference as well for watching videos. It makes things a bit more vibrant, but it also drains battery a little bit faster. This is a nice addition that we did appreciate. The notification LED on the very bottom is also quite helpful, even though you can't customize the actual color. Whenever you receive a new incoming call, a new text message, or even a new email, you'll hear a slight beep, as well as the notification light here will start to glow and pulse until you read or dismiss the notification. It works quite nicely, and in a discrete environment, you can also turn the sound off just for you to quickly glance and see the light and check out if you have a new incoming call or text. When it comes to the camera, it's interesting that Elephone decided to use a Samsung sensor as opposed to Sony. However, we do like the fact that the Samsung sensor on here is very fast in terms of the capture rate. Of course, to get the fastest experience, you can turn off HDR as well as flash, and basically your image is going to be taken in a snap. And so this is definitely a slight improvement in terms of the speed. When it comes to actual resolution, though, we were also pretty pleased. The camera was able to pick up a good amount of detail, and the display does a good job of showing off the images that you do take. When it comes to video capture, they're also pretty good. You can capture up to 1080p HD resolution video files, and we were pretty happy with the color saturation saturation as well as the accuracy on here. It's definitely an improvement over some previous phones we've seen from the manufacturer, and tap to focus works pretty good. You can also tap on a specific region of a photo that you want to always keep in focus, and you can pan your camera around and it will consistently focus in on one part of your shot, which is rather impressive. So overall, the actual camera on here does a pretty good job as far as recording video, as well as taking your images. Obviously, there are better camera phones out there, but at this price range, again, it's one of the better cameras we've seen. The frame-facing camera also does a good job in low-light situations. It captures your shots pretty good for Skype as well as WeChat, so in those situations, it also is quite wide angle, so it does a good job in terms of conferencing at night, and that is another plus on this particular device. You have a slew of different options you can go and select from in the camera application, including changing the resolution, shooting some panorama shots, adding on the beauty face mode, and so on and so forth. It's pretty intuitive and fast. Something else that I really liked about the P8000 and Elephone's devices in general is that they don't skimp out on the actual digitizer. A lot of Chinese cell phones tend to be not very responsive in terms of the display. Even though they are capacitive, you have to press kind of firmly, and oftentimes your touches aren't registered correctly. A good example of this would be some very cool cell phones that we reviewed a few weeks ago. Those devices had very good specs as well as a decent display in terms of the color saturation, but the experience of using the phone wasn't very good because the touchscreen wasn't that sensitive. That's not the case with the Elephone P8000, and your lightest touches are always registered, and it's easily as good as some LG and HTC phones we've seen with much more expensive price tags. That's also a plus. If I'm going to be extremely nitpicky, some things I didn't really love about the P8000 would be the fact that it is quite heavy and substantial. Obviously, the addition of some metal features on here does make the phone feel quite hefty, but it's even heavier than the Oppo Find 7, which I already consider a very heavy phone. In fact, this one is one of the heaviest 5.5-inch phones I've toted around, and that's definitely going to add some strain if you're on constantly traveling or moving around. The phone also slightly heats up on the very back if you do too much graphically intensive tasks, such as heavy multitasking, playing back some GPU-intensive games, as well as watching back some YouTube videos, so you notice some heat accumulating, especially along the top. In general, everything felt snappy, responsive, and lucid, and the 5.5-inch display does a great job of playing back any media content such as videos, just because the resolution is popping, colors are saturated, and it makes for a very enjoyable PMP video playing experience overall, as well as reading some ebooks and browsing. At the end of the day, the Elephone P8000 is more than worth its $170 asking price. It offers a premium construction quality, some great extras, as well as very snappy performance underneath the hood. The addition of Android 5.1 is also slightly better than the competition we've seen from Ficom and such, which only offer Android 4.4 or even older versions of Android. This one feels very vanilla-like, and everything is snappy, responsive, and easy to use. Slight quirks aside in the design, overall this is one of the better performing sub-$200 phablets currently on the market. And so for Elephone, I think it's a successful upgrade over the P7000 in terms of build quality and a slightly better display quality. To learn more information about the Elephone P8000, be sure to check out our full RIN review, but for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching. Here are OS Reviews.